Okay, well, I'd like to officially welcome everyone to Hello 2022. Get ready for anything. We are going to be talking today about hybrid work modes and adaptive knowledge networks in your brain. It's kind of interesting because when we usually every January we cover something on New Year's resolutions and goals, but this year, given the climate and all the change, we thought it would make more sense to actually not only talk about how to map your goals, but how to deal with your goals and your projects amidst a sea of change, unknown variables. It's one thing to set a goal to open up a new business, but if we're still in a pandemic or other factors aren't available, it may not be able you may not be able to reach your goal. So what the brain is going to enable you to do is to create that seamless network of all your information so that you can respond better to change. So I'm going to start out with the brain I created. It's actually called Adaptive Thought Networks. This brain is actually available online and you can take a copy of it. It's really just a template so that you can get a sense of all the possibilities of what you can put in your brain. And then I'm going to pass presenter over to Matt, and Matt's going to cover working with your brain on the go, using your brain for if-then scenarios, and getting more into more features as well. Now, for those of you that are new, we're not going to get into the basics of using the brain. This is more of a high-level discussion of what you can do with the brain. But that being said, if you're a new user on the call, and you don't know how to create a thought or do things, feel free to chat in the Q&A. But we also have the Brain 101 class tomorrow where we cover just a basic brain built structure. So pieces of information in the brain are what we call a thought. And a thought can represent any type of digital information. So I've just clicked on my thought called business contingency planning and resilience. And I've created a network of thoughts based on what happens if I get a positive or negative change in my business, or things that we're dealing with that are constantly changing. So pieces of information in the brain can have any type of digital information attached to it. So if I want to go into crisis communication, for instance, and I want to add a document about our customer advocates and outreach, I can simply go ahead and I'm just going to hide my go-to window, click on this thought, and you can see to the side here, we actually have our content area. So I can actually come in here and attach anything I want. So in this case, I might go ahead and get a file. And let me just go ahead and attach a Word document. So what that does is it allows me to start working right in my brain. And here's what I want to do. And go ahead and save that. And that gets saved right in that particular thought. But the great thing about that as well is I can connect this to something else. Maybe my customer advocates and outreach is actually related to our new hiring policy. So if I want to do a search for hires or anything like that, I can create a new thought here called new hires. We actually need to hire someone in my brain. So I'm going to actually add that thought for hiring. And I'm going to go back to my business area and come over here actually to management hierarchy and come in here and going to link this thought about what I need to do to hire new staff. And from here, I can kind of continue to build my network of knowledge. So if I want to go ahead and talk about, for instance, best practices for customer outreach or add more thoughts here, I can go ahead and do that. So best and let's just say customer surveys. I've just added two thoughts with a semicolon, and I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. I can also use the brain to go ahead and search for my topic. So I'm going to go ahead and hit search web. And maybe I want to grab some news articles on advocacy. Here we go. So there's some interesting articles here on stuff that's going on in the news. I'll just go ahead and add this article in and drop this in my brain. And you can see what that does is it creates a connection to that particular article. Now, this is just an example of how you can use the brain in terms of visualizing business scenarios in this particular area over here. But you can also do things on a personal level as well. So family planning and personal so you might have a health section in your brain, child education. You might be planning a new career and want to go ahead and start a new tech fund with investment, or you're looking at new leadership MBA programs or executive mentorship programs. These are also thoughts that you can create in your brain and kind of work it out. So that sort of leads us to our goal section. Now, you can have a thought in your brain that represents any type of goal, or you can actually create a specific area for your goal. So I'll just go over to my 2022 goals. So in this case, I've written a few goals here. So lead product development, personal inspiration, refinancing some commercial properties, a safe return to normalcy for the family, and securing a tailored education plan for my child. So these are all interesting goals. If I want to have another goal, move towards retirement transition, for instance, which might involve some financial planning, I can go ahead and just enter that. And if I decide that, actually school district is great, I've worked this particular goal out for my child, I can also come in here and forget or delete a thought as well. So the thing to keep in mind when you are creating goals in your brain is these goals can be very dynamic. Once something is in the brain, it can obviously change, and maybe you've worked this out in terms of the pandemic, or you've got a plan. So I'm just going to go ahead and change goals real quick. I can also add icons to my information as well, just to make it look very nice and different. So for instance, lead product development, if I want to come in here and just click on the little side square here, I can actually select an icon for my thought. And now I've got a thought, sort of a technology thought that represents that thought in my brain. So the question is, you're thinking, okay, I'm looking at all your thoughts. Why can't I just create a Word document? Or what makes the brain so unique in terms of seeing my information as thoughts rather than creating a folder of everything I need to do? Well, one of the great things about the brain is I can actually make connections and leverage knowledge. So for instance, refinancing my commercial building is actually related to interest rates, right? So I'm going to go ahead and start typing interest rates in here. Or maybe I'll just go ahead and type in inflation or investment topics. And what you can see here is I'm actually getting a list of other thoughts that might be related to my brain. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and make a connection to inflation. And now that I've connected that, I can actually go into that links me to all other kinds of information. This is actually going to take me to my financial investments planning section. And this is where sort of the adaptive network and thriving in the unknown portion of this brain comes to play. So I don't really know exactly what's going to happen with the financial markets, but there's a lot of great research out there. So what I can do is I can create a brain that has all my curated trusted sources of information. So of course I can Google the financial news every day, and the brain isn't taking the place of that. But there are certain tools that I use that I always want to have accessible, from my E-Trade account to my options profit calculator, to different investment topics that I might be looking into, stuff that I call a macro environment, which is the overall arching economic climate that we're in. And that sounds really overwhelming. You know, if I were to just talk to you about like, wow, these are all the things I need to know before I refinance a piece of property. Well, the thing is, you can see they're all right here and they're laid out pretty nicely. So what we're trying to do is give you almost like a remote control for your mind and capture the knowledge in a way that you can see it and reflect on it and build and grow on that knowledge. So you can see that some of my thoughts in this financial planning section are actually color coded. So we've got thoughts, and that's another way to sort of categorize thoughts. So you might have noticed that we can have subcategories of information in the brain. For instance, we have child thoughts. So under finance and investment planning, I can click on, for instance, food and agriculture. And under food and agriculture, maybe I have a particular article. So in this case, I have an article on the McPlant burger and the Beyond Meat company, which I'm actually looking at as a potential investment, right? And so one of the nice things about the brain, of course, is that you can connect information that's relevant and it's going to display in that context. But you can see I'm sort of building a child network, like a subcategory structure. But the other thing you can do is create thought types. So everything in green in this particular brain, and I'll just go ahead and click on this, is a tool. It's an investment tool. So of course, this particular tool, what the US 10-year treasury rate is and interest rates, is going to be really relevant to that refinance of the building. So I'm going to go ahead and link that to my into my project on my commercial refinance. In fact, I might just want to put this below, and you can change the connections, but now you can see that when I'm thinking about this particular goal, this 2022 goal, I've got links of previous knowledge that's going to help me make a better decision. I can also drag and drop documents that I might have that might be relevant to this project as well. So let me just go over to my desktop here. And I've got this Hello 2022 document. I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop that. Let's say maybe it's a document on the refinance. And what that does is that takes that document and makes it accessible and connected in the brain. So I can have some more documentation. I can actually come in here and link or drag and drop to particular folders as well. So I've got information on market studies. So this long-term trends folder. Let me just go ahead and take that and drop that in. That has some interesting information as well. So you can see that I'm building a nice accessible way to look at all this information, but at the same time, it becomes my thinking spot. The other thing that we haven't really touched on here is each thought has its own note area here. So if I want to come in and talk about, I can put in different banks. Bank A is offering this rate, but no relationship. My contact is X. And by the way, I actually love using this section for contact, numbers, little notes. I can have, as I'm chatting with them, conversation notes. And this helps me kind of make my decision. And again, I can't necessarily predict or control what's happening in the macro economy in terms of inflation or interest rates, but I can empower myself to reach this 2022 goal by building a knowledge network that lets me, that informs my action to make more intelligent decisions. So I just want to go back. I'm going to go back to this finance section and dig a little bit deeper, just so you can kind of get a sense of maybe some other stuff that we have going on here. So it's really interesting to be able to build new knowledge in your brain. So let's go into, let me click on supply chain. There is a lot of talk right now about the global shortage of semiconductors and how that's affecting the world. So you can see I have links to different articles. Here's an article for those of you from Canada. I was in Canada for a bit, where you can see there's a lot of talk also internationally, like what's going on with our groceries, inflation. I've got a link to US Department of Commerce in terms of the semiconductor supply chain. But this is a pretty complicated issue. So what I want to do is I actually want to go ahead and use the search web feature, and I'm going to go out and search the web on all kinds of interesting things, like, well, this is a very interesting article, what the semiconductor shortage is all about, what that affects. And I can actually come in here and drop that in and build my knowledge base, and this is great for sharing information. That's going to be a great segue for Matt. So maybe I'm doing my research. I am co-researching this with Matt, and Matt's got some great knowledge that I don't have. So one of the nice things about the brain, as we talk about these adaptive thought networks, is as I'm building my knowledge, and I can actually sometimes when I drag and drop a link, you can actually see it gets the title of the article. Sometimes you can change it, so you can just come over. I'm just going to go ahead and rename that article. It looks like the GoToMeeting, to wait for the page to kind of load before I can click on it. 1 second. Okay, I'll just change it to chip shortages. Now, what do chip shortages affect? Well, we can go back, and if you look at the, for instance, the EV market, this is an investment theme I'm covering. I can go ahead and link to that. It does affect the chip shortages market because, of course, cars need chips. But so I've actually got this article on Tesla about how they're record profit, doing amazing, but of course they may not grow quite as fast because of the chip shortage. And of course, I can link other companies as well that I might have in my brain as to how they're affected by this. We also know Apple, and I have Apple in my brain as well. Let's give it a chance to load. Okay, so you can see I'm just typing in the first couple letters, maybe a little bit more because of the speed of the webinar, and it's going to pull up that thought in my brain. And I'm going to link to Apple as well. So now I've got, when I'm looking at this particular company, I can see how it relates. I can actually even adjust the type of relationship. And in fact, for instance, Tesla is weakly connected. It is affected by this, but not as affected as some other companies because of their demand. So you can actually come in here and make different connections. And this takes me to actually my high tech section, where I've actually got different companies listed here. And I can continue to see the impact of things like the chip shortage on high tech. So I think with that, there's a little more I can cover on thought typing and tagging, but I don't know, Matt, if we have any questions, or if we want to, now might be a good segue just to get into, let me just go ahead and make sure I've got sync on. Yeah, sync here to switch to you, so we can chat about the different modes of actually looking at this information and building this information on the go.
Sure, absolutely. If you want to send a presenter my way, Shelley has shared this brain with me, and actually I can take presenter now.
Let me grab, yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, got it.
And
okay.
There we go. Now, a couple of things that that I want to share with you. I'm going to turn on my webcam as well. Let me know when you can see my screen, Shelley.
Okay. Yeah, I can see adaptive thought network.
Okay, great. And I'm actually going to bring up another little application that I run that actually mimics, let me just actually activate it here, actually mimics what you will see on my iPhone. So I've got the iOS app for TheBrain, which means I'm holding my phone in my hand right now, and what you see on the screen is actually what I am, just minimize that. It's actually what I am seeing on my phone. So I'm gonna open up the Brain app. And while Shelly was using, she shared her brain with me earlier, and while she was demoing her brain, I actually gave it some wallpaper as well. There you can see the sync is kicking off in the background, so I'm going to get all of the latest changes that Shelly made to her brain. She'll get any changes that I make to this brain. And this is all done through TeamBrain. TeamBrain is a more advanced sort of license type that is available for people that want to collaborate in the same brain database. And it's just a fantastic way for people who are working remote or on the go, need access to their brain wherever they may be. It's a great way to access all of your data that you're putting into your brain. And notice that the application on the phone behaves much the same as the desktop. I simply tap on a thought, I can activate that thought. If I go into financial information and down into supply chain, I can continue to add, let's say I've got my own supply chain notes. I want to add a note on shipping. I'm just going to tap on the plus sign and add a note on shipping and create that thought. So I've created a thought for supply chain, and all of my shipping information is going to come right in to this particular thought. And I can sync this. So I'll tap on the little sync icon. It'll send, like I said, all of my changes up to the server. When Shelly syncs, she'll receive all of my changes as well. So we're not going to focus entirely on TeamBrain, but we just want to share with you that this functionality and this technology is available. And it's a really, really great way to collaborate in the brain databases that you create. Another thing that I want to share with you while I'm on the phone is a feature within the brain, whether you're using just the Pro Combo license of the brain for just yourself and syncing your brain to, excuse me, multiple devices. So you can get to the brain when you're working from your home office. You can get to your brain database from your traveling laptop or whatever machine you happen to be logged in on. And the Brain box functions in that environment with a Pro Combo license or with TeamBrain. And it allows you to quickly capture information. You know, we're all so busy these days, and I'll be browsing online, or I've created a file on my desktop, and I don't have, you know, the right brain open right now. I'll go back to my brain list, and here's all the different brains that I have available. But let's say I am browsing the web. I'm going to, open up my web browser. So navigate over to my web browser. And here I found an interesting article on air quality in Los Angeles. Now, you'll see in just a moment why this page is important to me. I'm keeping track of Los Angeles, you know, air quality and earthquakes, fire hazards, and things like that. You'll see why in just a moment. It's part of my own contingency brain. And so this is a really great page. It's going to be a really helpful resource. It's going to help me know when I should have clients coming in or when I should not, avoid having clients and so forth. So I'm going to tap on the share icon. So on my browser, I can share this web page, and I scroll down, and at the bottom of the list is add to BrainBox. Great, that's a really important page for me. I really like it. I'm going to spend some time here later. I just send it to my brain box. And if I go to my list of all the different web pages I've recently opened, here's another one with more information about rolling blackouts in Los Angeles. So, you know, energy, stability, and so forth. So once again, that's a great page. I tap on the share button and I scroll down and I simply say add to brain box. Great, I've captured that information, and at a later date, I can do something with it. Let's do that now. So I'm going to put my phone down now, and I'm going to go into my desktop application of TheBrain. And those changes that I just made, by the way, and synced up to the cloud, I am actually going to go to, well, here, I'll just click on the sync button is actually kicking off in the background. So it's syncing all the latest changes. And on your brain, you can always click on this little clock icon in the right-hand corner. I can see there's chip shortages. So here's all the changes that Shelly just recently made to TheBrain. There's my shipping thought, which I just added into TheBrain under supply chain as well. So all those changes that Shelly's doing, that I'm doing, they're being synced to the cloud, and they're accessible in this brain regardless of the device I happen to log in from my desktop or from my iOS device. So let me jump over now into another brain. This is another sample brain that we will make available for you. It's a really fantastic brain, and it's a great example of a network map. Now, the great thing about this brain is how it shares the importance of link relationships. One of the things we're going to talk today is about if-then scenarios, having your brain help you make important decisions for processes or projects that you're working on. And this is a great example of why links between thoughts are so important and how much value there is in that in the brain over a typical file and folder structure. You know, Shelly said it herself. Yeah, you could log in the morning and Google search the latest news to find out what's going on. Great. How do you retain that information? How do you make it dependable and get it into a reliable source and actually reflect on other related pieces of information for your projects, for your business process? So let's say, for example, I get a phone call and we have an application called Remedy at this company, and this fictitious company that I've built the brain for, or this brain was built for. Regardless, Remedy is down. Someone can't log into Remedy. Something's going on. So I'm just going to do a search in my brain. And there, I recently did a search for it, REM. There's all the thoughts that start with REM. And here is Remedy. And I hover over Remedy. I can see Remedy is an application. I'm getting a call from someone in the IT support center saying, hey, can't log into Remedy. What's going on? I've got my resources. I can roll through the backup guide and maybe restart, check out the spec sheet, see if there's any updates. The migration to version 6 went successful. Everything should be fine. So I'm not exactly sure what the problem is. Here's possibility number one. I've got a note over on the right that the Remedy application is being managed by Jason Finnegan. And notice that Jason is underlined in blue. This is a thought mention that's showing up, meaning Jason, a thought for Jason exists elsewhere in this brain. I can right click and make this a permanent link, or I can simply activate the Jason thought. So here I jump over to Jason's thought. I've got his phone number. He's in engineering and development. I can't get a hold of Jason. I can't get a hold of anyone on the development team. Maybe it's too early in the morning for them, or they're on an office retreat. They're not available. What do I do? So let's go back to Remedy. Can't get a hold of anyone to help me there. I can start looking at and seeing where Remedy is hosted. This brain shares with me. Let me go back to the home thought. I've got all of my different applications available, so I can see all the different CRM apps, communication apps, finance apps that my company utilizes. I've got access to all of my company databases, all the different user communities, so people that are relying on software and applications and so forth, and then the servers. I have them organized by location. So I'm going to jump back to Remedy. And I can see that Remedy is running on the solution serve. That's the server in San Diego. Paula is in charge of the San Diego servers. Everything is fine there. There's nothing wrong with the server. So we check that off, no problem. Let's come back to Remedy. Remedy also pulls its data from the Remedy DB1. That's the database that Remedy receives its information from. This is hosted on the apps01 server, so the database is on a different server. It's hosted in Los Angeles, and all of my Los Angeles servers are managed by Steve. I give Steve a call. Maybe there was a mild earthquake, it knocked out some power. Maybe we had one of those rolling blackouts. Okay, the server is down for an hour. Who is that going to affect? Let's go back to Remedy, and I'm going to contact the IT support center and let them know, hey, Los Angeles is without power right now. The servers are down. The database, the server itself is hosted in San Diego, that's fine, but the database it's trying to connect to can't be reached. So servers, this application is not going to be functional for an hour. While I'm at it, I'm going to take a look at all of my Los Angeles servers. The Apps01 database is not on. It's not running the Remedy database. It's running the ACT application. I want to contact anyone in the sales representative, all of my sales representatives, and let them know, hey, we've got a Los Angeles problem. The server's down. We're going to be back up and running in 1 hour. Go ahead and prepare for that, or do whatever is necessary to roll with that information. So the links between my thoughts are providing me, and I understand I went through that very, very quickly, but as you can see, my applications, I've got information about how to restart that app, who's responsible for it, where all the different servers are located, as well as the different teams that rely on those servers or on those applications in order to do their job. So all of that information that I just went through very quickly was provided for me through the links, the relationships between thoughts in my brain. I never opened a single document, had a couple of notes where I could pull up a phone number or click on a related thought. And while I'm here thinking, wow, we had this earthquake that knocked out power, let's start reviewing what's happening in Los Angeles. Maybe we want to start rolling some of those, moving some backup servers, or have a stronger contingency plan if this is happening frequently. Obviously, I would be taking notes on how many times the Los Angeles servers are going down because we're losing power, and start making contingency plans for all the apps there to make sure that that they stay online. We've got solid backups and so forth. And remember earlier that I created those, or I found those web pages that I really liked. I'm keeping track of, for LA servers, all of the different factors that are beyond my control. I mean, the ultimate contingency plan is to be able to, I think Shelly and I had this conversation earlier in the week, be able to read the future. Well, the brain can't tell you the future, but it can help you prepare for it. So I can keep track of, maybe I've got engineers coming in town, or we're going to be moving some servers from Los Angeles to San Diego. What's the 10-day weather forecast? What's going to be the best day to make this move? So I've got a quick link there. Obviously these days we need to know what's going on with COVID, what are travel advisories or information for businesses, so we can stay open and stay productive. So I've got all of my links there for COVID. It's Los Angeles. I don't mean to scare you or anyone from ever visiting Los Angeles, but we need to be aware of earthquakes and fire alerts. And I've got all this information. Again, you can't predict it, but you can look to see what local professionals are saying about it, when recent earthquakes occurred, and so forth. And also water and power. Are there any power outages, water outages? So all these great resources. And remember, I captured earlier some great resources while I was on my phone. So I'm going to bring those in now. Here I am on my LA resources thought, and I am going to click on my BrainBox icon. Now, BrainBox, again, is where we can send data, send information when we're in a hurry and we don't have a home for that data yet, or we don't have that brain open. Sure, I could have opened TheBrain or logged into that web page from my desktop and had the two screens open, as Shelly showed you earlier. I drag and drop. It's really, really easy to use and do when you have that brain open. I don't always have the same brain open. I use multiple smaller topic specific brains. And I don't always have time. I see some information, I capture it. Now I've got the time to move it in. And there are those two thoughts. I call everything a thought. I'm sorry. There are those two web pages that I captured earlier in BrainBox. And now I've come to the right brain, to the right thought. Los Angeles air quality control. I already know it's the right thought, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this little plus sign, moves it out of the brain box, and there it is, air quality index. I've got that thought captured in my brain. And here's that rolling blackout. Now, if I wanted to preview, there's a button, so I can just preview. Of course, that opened on another monitor. Sorry about that. So there's that rolling blackout, a lot of helpful information there. That's great. So yes, that is what I want. I'm going to move that out of BrainBox and give it a permanent home right here in the correct brain in the correct area. So you can add web pages so easily. I do that quite often. You can also add files and documents. If you've got, I thought I had a file here on my desktop, and of course it has disappeared. So here I'm just going to pull a file up to my desktop. It's a different process for Windows than it is on a Mac. And here is my file.
And
And this
Matt,
file is actually a brain backup. Yes, go ahead, Shelley.
just to let you know, we actually had a lot of questions, actually from Thomas and a number of users, on when I moved that original file, as well as
Mm-hmm.
the folder, about did I move it into my brain? Is it a
Oh, good, good.
copy? Is it a
Great.
link? So since we're chatting, you're in drag and drop, and hello, I think
Yeah.
I got my webcam working again.
Yes.
Here I am animated. But go ahead, and if you want to cover
Sure.
that triggered a lot. I'm just in Q&A now. Since
Absolutely.
you're in
Great.
files, very good,
Great.
thanks.
So here I've got a file. This is actually a brain backup, a BRZ, a brain archive file. But I can, on a Windows machine, I can right click on any file that I see that I like. I want to send that into BrainBox. I can right click, and I'm on Windows 11, so there's a few new features for me, but it's here. If I click on show more options, I can send to BrainBox. So you can send an individual file into your BrainBox or web pages. Now on a Mac machine, you don't want to take the time for me to go log into a Mac and rejoin the meeting. You simply drag a file onto the brain icon in the dock, and that is going to be take care of moving that file into BrainBox, and it'll be in BrainBox waiting for you, so you can connect it to the right thought, the right location, the right brain at a later date. So now let's talk about moving files in, as Shelley mentioned. Let's say I just know for sure, here's my daily journal on activities that's happening in Los Angeles. I want to bring this into my brain. Now, before I just drag and drop that into my brain, I want to fully disclose that I have modified the default setting so that the brain application works for my process. I like to move data into the brain. I don't want to copy. I don't want to create a link. I want to move it into the brain for many reasons. Number one, I share brains with Shelley and other colleagues at TheBrain Technologies. Even other brain customers I collaborate in different brains with. And so I like to move that data in. I can access then that data online or from other devices. The default setting for drag and drop into the brain, whether it's a file or a folder, the default setting is to make a copy, a duplicate of that file. So the original is still there. And now internally inside your brain database, you have a copy of that file. That's the default setting. The third option is to create a link. So the file stays where it is, and you just move a shortcut into your brain that points to that file. You know, no two environments are the same. Sometimes you're in a network environment and people have files on a shared drive, and you just need to link to those. That type of user then can change their default settings, so they're just linking to files. I like to have all my files in the brain, so there's one application to go to when I need to retrieve that important Word document or spreadsheet or what have you. So I'm going to drag and drop. You can see both on the screen at the same time, my LA resources thought, my file. I drag and drop into the brain. The original document the file is no longer there. It's been moved. There's daily journal. The thought name is the file name, and I move that internally inside my brain database. There are keyboard shortcuts that you can use so that you can move a file or link to a file, or as I said, you can change the default settings. I'm going into options and preferences, and on the behavior tab, I can specify how do I want the brain to behave when I'm dragging and dropping. Do I want to move it, copy it, or link it? So this is a really, really important takeaway. especially for today's topic. How do you want the brain to behave when you drag and drop, starting to move all this data so you've got easy access to it? But should that be a link, a copy, or a move? There are your options right there. Now, if you're on a Mac machine, you would click on the brain preferences and get to this same screen. So then finally, I want to share with you, now that we know the importance of seeing and visualizing those links between thoughts to help us make informed decisions, I want to share with you that your brain can help guide you. And this is an if-then scenario. So I've got another brain, and Shelly and I really just wanted to give you a variety of different brains and topics. No two businesses are ever quite alike. So we can't have just one business example that fits um, everyone's environment. This is a biotech brain, and I'm happy to share a copy of this brain today as well. And I've set up a couple of different link labels. The first, since we talked about the fact that we were going to share this today, is sort of an if then. It's actually a yes, no. But notice here, let me just give you a quick review of this brain. I'm keeping track of different medical conditions that my company is researching. I have different medications. I'm a biotech company, and these are some of the different products that we make. I've got access to all of the different research that we're doing, the teams and so forth. And then of course, my sales teams and sales progress and data as well. So if I go under medications and I click on Liforex, for example, one of my medications, notice that I have labels on the links between thoughts. So I understand the relationships. Liforex, it is a medication that my company manufactures. Now, these are all made up names, but I did actually work with a client that was working with a biotech manufacturer, and this is exactly how their brain was set up, and it really benefited all the users that had access to the brain. Because here I can say, let's say I'm a sales rep for Liforex, and I get a call from someone in the US that wants to start distributing. So it is, as you can see, FDA approved for coronary artery disease. However, it is not FDA approved for atrial fibrillation. So regardless of the information I have about that, I need to know first where this potential client is calling from, so I can provide them with the right information. If they're here in the US, then yes, absolutely, I can give them info on using this medication for coronary artery disease. I cannot, however, advise it for atrial fibrillation. It is non-FDA approved. Just tell you more about the relationship between a person and a file, or a problem and a product, so many different scenarios. Here you can see even I've got two people that are linked to Liforex. One is Damien is the label expert. So in other words, we have a problem with this product. We've got a question about it. We're going to come to Damien. We actually have an employee that has firsthand experience. Laura takes Liforex, or has taken it in the past. So if we want to ask questions about side effects or benefits or caveats, whatever the case may be, she's a really valuable resource and doesn't mind sharing that information with us. And again, how would that information be displayed in a file and folder directory? You've got a folder on a product you're making, and different people on the team know specific pieces of information about that product. How do you capture that information in a file and folder directory? And here I'm going to create a new link label between two thoughts. So I reconnected Liforex back to atrial fibrillation. And when I click on a link between two thoughts, number one, it focuses on that link. You can see that I can create a note on that link between those two thoughts. So notes aren't just for thoughts. You can leave a note on the relationship between two thoughts. If I double click on the link, I open up the link properties. I can type up just a one-off label if I just want to describe, when a due date for a project is, or something like that. I can type that on the label. In this case, I want to create a new thought type. So I'm going to click on new type. And the reason why I would create, not thought type, excuse me, a link type, is if I want to create it over and over and over again. I'm going to use this link label between multiple different thoughts within my brain, and I can run reports on them. So I can find all links within a brain that are, in this case, FDA approved, FDA non-approved. I'm going to create a new one now called clinical trial. And let me go back into clinical trial. I am going to modify this. I just want it to stand out. So I'm going to click on the little pencil icon, and clinical trials will always have an orange link between two thoughts. And so now I can see LifeRx, and this wouldn't be a thought type. LifeRx, FDA approved or not? Well, it depends on the condition that it's related to. For coronary artery disease, it is. For atrial fibrillation, now I'm aware that it is undergoing clinical trials. So we don't have the answer for that quite yet. So those are link labels between two thoughts and link types. Here's another scenario for Scout Laboratories. Obviously making the product, but then we're also selling the product as well. So under clients and distributors, I've got all of my different clients and distributor information down below, their contact information, their invoices and histories and so forth. And I have mapped out in my brain a procedure. So I can share this brain with my sales team. And when they have a potential new client that they're working with, here are the steps that we take in order to get them logged into the system, signed in, and becoming a new client, a new distributor for our organization. So step one is simply to have a face-to-face meeting. And obviously over in the notes, we can have all the paperwork you should bring with you, the documents you should have, and so forth. This is just an outline of the structure, face-to-face meeting. And then ask yourself, was it a success, yes or no? And as you can see, the brain is going to take me into two different directions. I just had a face-to-face meeting with client X. They weren't really thrilled about something that information, or they weren't quite ready yet. So no, they're not ready to sign on. So the next step is to start to finesse this deal. And obviously I've got some notes. We want to send follow-up emails. We want to send more product details, information, clinical trial results, paperwork, data to really impress them. And then we come back with a 2-month check-in. Was the 2-month check-in a success? Yes or no? If no, we skip over to a 1 year. And as you can see, we finally close this out. This client is not interested after 1 year of trying to finesse this deal. However, after 1 year, they seem interested. We go all the way back to that face-to-face meeting. So once again, we want to see them face-to-face, represent ourselves. And this time, if it's a success, then yes, we send them the non-disclosure agreement and we start going through the contracts. Questions about the contracts, we're going to talk to Betty over in finance. Are there any disputes about the contract? Yes, they want to sign. They want to make changes. No disputes, they become a full-time distributor. Yes, there's disputes, then we send it over to Wendy in the legal department, and she takes it from there. You can see it's just a dead end. It's out of our hands. Wendy is going to take the next steps. If
Go,
they are a
Wendy.
full, way to go, Wendy. And if they are going to be a full-time distributor, we need to get them set up with an account manager. So I've got links to all of my account managers and the procedures we follow and so forth. So the brain can help guide you along the way, and you can create branches for yes, no, maybe, if, then, and so forth to consistently follow business processes. And that's really the value that those yes, no, or if then relationships in a brain structure can help you create. And then finally, my last component, I see we're coming up at the end of the hour. I wanted to share with you a real world scenario. And, I've got a couple of different examples in my own personal brain of, contingency planning for vacations. I have a lot for finances, but obviously we're not going to take a look at my stock portfolio today. So the example that I decided to share with you is, and here I'm going to drag this up onto the other screen. Whenever I'm giving a presentation, I keep notes on another screen in the brain. I love the brain for its note-taking capabilities. And here you can see, are the notes for today's webinar. You can see prior to the webinar, I had a little checklist to go through. Shelly and I verify that we're on the same resolution so it's not obtrusive switching from one screen to another and so forth. I've got the different brains that I'm presenting. If for any reason, I accidentally close the app where I'm sharing my iPhone, I've got a link to the exe that launches that app. So I can click there and it's going to open up the app for me once again, so I can start sharing my phone. I've got links from one brain to another when it's time to talk about the if-then scenario. Here in my sort of notes for this brain, I can click and go right to the new client procedure thought in another brain. So that's sort of my contingency plan for just today's webinar. Fallback, a script to quickly follow, fallback links to easily access information that I have access to. And of course, Shelly and I always set up that contingency plan to bounce screen sharing back and forth if anything happens. And we even utilize that today. So even from the smallest detail, the smallest project to a large organization, like we said, we can't predict the future, but the brain can certainly help you stay prepared and informed on the next step to take, regardless of what rolls down the path in 2022. And with that, Shelly, I'm going to send it back to you to see if we have any additional questions to answer or demo today.
All right, great. Yes, we actually have some. There's a question that actually came in from Daniel, and I really like this question because we didn't really get into search and instant activate for
Oh,
ready for
yeah.
anything. Daniel, his question is pretty basic, but maybe a question that we should cover. Where he says, "I understand the brain is great for visualizing links, but how do I use it just to find information really quickly?" And the funny thing about that is like my prime. Like for instance, if you went back to, we're sharing the contingency mapping brain, like instant activate, swab me now, that would bring up my COVID testing PCR page that I use when I travel and when my daughter has to, go back to school to get retested. So it's really funny that like it's so good for just bringing up like quick pieces of tidbits. Like I have everything linked. So as much as we love all these links, can we take a step back, Matt, and show Daniel how amazing the search and the instant
Yeah.
activate is? And I mean, like I actually put 2 COVID testing sites in my, and I don't, and not that it matters, but I don't have COVID. But of course, all these schools, and every time you travel internationally, you need the PCR test. So it's like, who are they? Like, there's so many companies, and I have 2 that I love that are just there, and I just like, boom. That's just one example. Vendor
Yeah.
management,
Yeah.
same thing. Here's the bank I love, boom. And real estate agents, things like that. So maybe you can show a little bit of zooming to different information pieces in your brain through search.
Sure, absolutely. The important thing to remember about search within the brain is that our application, the brain, is utilizing your operating system's indexing capabilities. And what that means is on a Windows machine, we are tapping into Windows desktop search. And on a Mac, we're tapping into Spotlight. And because your OS is doing all of the indexing, that makes the search results in the brain just incredibly accurate, but also just fast, responsive, and very light for the application. Notice I just type in the first few letters of a word, and I am met with sort of 2 different groupings of search results. The first are all of my thoughts, and if the word is showing up on a link label or a links note, or an event, something we didn't even cover today is event reminders that you can set up in the brain timeline. Whatever it is you've typed in so far, if it shows up in any of those criteria, it'll be in your first grouping. And the second grouping are all of the notes and file attachments that are going into the brain. So you type in a note. Here, the thought itself is the impact of COVID, but in the note, you can see when I hover over one of my search results, I get a preview, and wherever the word COV appears in the note of that thought, that's going to ping my search results, as well as here's just a Word document. Hello 2022 is the name of a document. Somewhere in that document exists COVID or COV in some scenario. Now
Yeah.
there's a third grouping also I should point out really quickly. You don't see it here on our brain because Shelly and I think we both typically stay away from shortcuts to files. However, uh, your search results will still show up. So if you just did a shortcut to a file, a Word document, a spreadsheet, or what have you, that would be in the third grouping. So all of your links, the file doesn't reside inside the brain, but the file that you're pointing to has a search result that matches what you're querying, and so that would show up for you as well. And of course, you can click on any one of these to go directly to that thought. And if you determine that that is not the thought that you were looking for, when you click on the search results, it's going to take you back to your most recently activated search.
And you can even do a search for silly things like, I think, swab. I don't know if I put in swab me now, and it's like, boom, then the site comes up with this, company.
There
There
it
it
is.
is.
There
And
it
not
is.
that I'm promoting that, but it's just like these little things that it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, here they are, and it's
Yeah.
connected to this. It's just so serendipitous that it's great. And I feel like because of the information and all the amazing links, people don't realize just what a powerful, yeah, I'm going to dump all this stuff in and I can just search for it. So we're talking how cool it is to create these amazing links, but even if your links aren't so amazing and you just had a few basic thoughts and stuff under, you know what? That's what most basic information management tools do.
Yeah.
You're still gonna get that aggregation and search capability. So
That's right. And there's
um,
features, we won't get
yeah,
into all of them, but if I'm just in a very large brain and I say, well, I'm really searching for this word in this area, this department, or this, sort of branch of the brain that I happen to be working in, there's child word only. So from the active thought down, is it finding the word anything with COV? And so I can check there, and it certainly does. It finds one result that in this area down. So in other words, that swab me now and the other COVID information, that's in a different area of the brain. Only one thought in this particular area, or this active thought and down, contains those search results.
it's 2022. I can't believe that's our search example, but there it is. Anyway, and we are going to go a little more in depth because Dan is asking, when demoing the search, could you also go into how searches can be filtered? So that gets into reports. So maybe a little bit since Dan asked. And oh, before we
Absolutely.
do that, I should mention we're on the hour. We are going into overtime with Q&A for an extra 10 minutes. For those of you that can't stay, thank you for your time. We appreciate your time. We are have this recorded so you can listen to it again or play it back. Both my brain and a number of Matt's brains are available to you as examples. We'll send you links to those. I actually published mine online because it is just an example. All the financial information in the brain that I've created is not my personal financial information, as Matt has mentioned as well. It's just
Yeah.
a generic example. So you can look at those as well. But if you can stay on, we are going to continue for another 10 minutes because there's a lot coming into the Q&A, and this is a lot. There's a lot to unpack with this topic as well. So anyway,
so so here I am in the report, and the report capabilities are a pro feature of the brain, and it's just another way of finding, aggregating through your data and finding additional information about your brain. You can see I would call this a fairly small brain database. There's 102 thoughts in this brain. Now, to get to the report, I clicked on the little icon next to the search bar. You can also click on View and go down to Reports. So that's going to open up your report. I refresh, the default setting is just an alphabetical listing of all thoughts in this particular brain, and I can click and go directly to that thought. If I want to find all thoughts that are of a specific thought type, so I think Shelly had investment tools. So I checked investment tools. There are my 5 different investment tools. Now, it who knows, these thoughts might all be connected to one another within the brain. Here, if we turn off the viewing of our thought types, yeah, they're all pretty close together. In some scenarios, you may have, thought thought types or thought tags, and they're distributed throughout the brain. They're sort of peppered here and there, but you need to find all of your active projects or all of your urgent action items, or a combination of both. An investment tool, this brain doesn't have any tags yet, but let's say it's urgent that I set up a new E-Trade account. So I'm going really quickly here, but I'm going to set up a new tag called urgent. And tags are really great because you can apply multiple tags to a thought. Tags are just, I always think of them as attributes. So it's urgent that I set up a new E-Trade account. It's also urgent that I research my company's relationship with Cisco systems. Two urgent for completely different reasons. Uh, but did I not create it right? Here, hold on, I'll type it once again, urgent.
I'm glad you're
There it
showing this
is.
too, because that was my next in my brain too. I like to have tags for high cost item, low tags for price, tags for time frame, so that as I've got that thought type, the tags just give it that additional semantic meaning. And I'll also have tags for risk level on some of the companies in terms of investing as well. So since we're
Yeah.
talking about getting ready for anything, you can tag things high, medium, low risk as well.
Absolutely. And now in the reports, we can filter the view using combinations of thought types and thought tags, as well as, when the thought was modified. So here I'm looking for investment tools that are currently urgent. There's only one, it's E-Trade. I've got a lot of different investment tools in this brain. I've got a lot of different urgent action items, but there's only one investment tool that needs some type of urgent action. What is that action? Well, that I typically leave that information in the note of
Mhm.
that particular thought, what needs to happen. You can also, let me just reset this and say, all right, show me all thoughts that have been modified, or maybe, I've got a large brain with thousands and thousands of thoughts. I modified a thought last Friday and I can't remember what thought it was. Well, I can filter. Well, last Friday we were modifying a lot of these thoughts, I guess. So here we'll say, trying to find a day that has less. So on the 24th, there we go. We've only got 55 thoughts to look through. So you can actually go through and find or use all of these different settings and features for thoughts to sort of filter the view. And of course, we can search by terms here as well. So the thought had something to do with program. And so I'll refresh this. There's one that worked out perfectly. So there's one thought that I modified, or someone modified on the 24th, and it was the MBA leadership program thought. Who modified it? Well, I'm going to look at the thought history. So I click to open thought properties, look at the thought history, and Shelley modified that thought at 9:46 on the 24th. So the track of all of that history of modifications of thought names and file attachments and so forth. And I can use all of that additional data to further refine my search criteria in the reports.
Okay, great. And then actually, Scott brought up an interesting little comment there for the earlier question of like uses beyond, expansive link analysis. He said, I would just like to add that if you're interested to make a bunch of thoughts about bands or movies or video games or books, and then start linking things, it gets addictive. The more you do it, the more interesting your brain becomes. And that's a very good point. And I don't know, Matt, if you have like your canoeing brain, or we've gone really deep into 2022 gravitas. But you know what? 2022 is going to be really fun too. Like I didn't show you my planned trips to like Zion Park or
Hey, yeah.
there we go, inspired by Matt's brain. But just to lighten it up, yes, like just I have a cool science fiction brain. I know somebody who's really into Japanese anime, and they've got like all kinds of cool stuff in their brain. So just remember, especially a new user, even if you have to map out, let's say, your company's supply chain, you might want to start with like your weekend plans and have fun with it. And also these goals don't necessarily have to be, making $1 million in the market or whatever. They can be like, how do I get healthy in 2020. Diet, exercise. I didn't have a chance to show you my whole health section
Yeah.
in another brain, but just more personal goals and fun goals. So maybe Matt, if we want to switch gears and show the attendees just a couple examples more in that direction as well.
Sure, sure. And this is just my recreational brain. This is my real brain. A lot of the brains you've seen today, I think all of them, have been demo brains where we can add and delete content and we're not too worried about showing some sensitive information. Well, here is my real brain. And as you can see, I'm keeping track of potential vacations to go on with my family in 2022. We're in flux. We don't know what travel restrictions will exist or where it will be, safe to travel and so forth. So I've got a couple of different ideas, and right now there's not really much on them. I've got a couple of notes of things we can do, places we would stay, and so forth, and these different thoughts. I keep track of all my different hobbies and interests, so I keep pictures of woodworking projects I'm working on, my steps along the way, what happens next. Maybe I need to purchase something. Maybe I need to spend some time, building a different part that's going to be added on or what have you. So everything regarding this project is within 2 or 3 clicks of one another, 2 or 3 thoughts away. So building a cedar strip kayak. The next step, I found a video. The next step is glassing the hull and the deck. And so that is, this is a video on what it takes. Then I need to purchase some carbon paper to transfer plans to some templates. So those are the next 2 steps in the kayak build. And anything that I purchase along the way, US Composites, that's where I purchase fiberglass and epoxies and so forth. So I keep track of shipping numbers and confirmation, email confirmations, and then my the mixing rules, how much should be mixed, component A with component B, that sort of thing. So everything for this project, whether it's a video, whether it's just a picture of what I want the deck stripping to look like or so forth, it's all just within a few steps of one another. And as far as our topic today, contingency plans, maybe it's winter, maybe it's too cold to pull this thing out. It's sort of large and it takes up the whole driveway. So I'm going to be doing some work just in the garage, and I can build some new sawhorses. So I've got to click a tier away to work on other woodworking projects that actually affect this one with having the right tools and so forth. So every step along the way of this project, whether it's a web page, a graphic, an email, a spreadsheet, or what have you, it all is easily accessible within my brain, whether it's in this brain or on my iPhone brain when I'm working out in the wood shop.
And actually what I love too for those little snippets is brain box. So when I'm on my iPhone and I
Mhm.
find something, I just put it in the brain box and then I can categorize it later. Like the other day, I'm into building these like biodomes with my daughter for school where I find all these little animal habitats. And there was this woman, she does this amazing art sculptures with like household items like sponges, and she built like a whole coral reef on just cleaning with cleaning products. And I was like, wow, she's really cool. So I put her in my brain, and it's like I can't even remember who her name is or anything, but like I can literally activate my animal habitat section in my personal brain, and she's gonna pop up, and it's like,
Absolutely.
oh wow, like what an amazing artist that now I have. That I know I'm gonna forget. I have forgotten in like 2 days, but in a couple years. So stuff like that is great. So we're actually on the end of our session here, but there are a couple more questions that we're going to get to, and then we're going to wrap things up. One of the questions was from Daniel. If I create a brain for a product specification, can I export that brain as an MS Word document? Yes, you can export your brain in their outline view
That's
into
right. Yeah.
the Word.
Yeah.
So you can do that. I don't know if you have anything more to add. We probably won't get into kind of how to since we're in the end of time, but I thought I'd bring up that question.
Yeah, I would say go to our website and do a quick search for The Brain 202. That's a webinar that we've had in the past that we do go into the details step by step of how to export a brain and the different options that you have for exporting a brain. You can export a brain into a file and folder format. If, let's say, someone else, a friend of mine, builds kayaks and they say, hey, you've got some helpful information. Do you mind sharing a copy of that with me? Well, not at all. I'm not going to share this entire brain with them because this brain also contains my vacation information and other hobbies and interests that they don't even care about. So just this section of a brain, you can actually copy a section of a brain, export it into an outline or a file and folder format and so forth. So yes, those options are there, or export it into a smaller brain. So I can just copy or grab a section of a brain and start a new brain with just the thoughts that I've copied, all the files, all the attachments, all the notes, graphics, everything, and then share that brain with another user. So they would get just the kayak building information, not anything about canoes or surfboards or bicycles and so forth.
All right, great. And then Ben was asking, can the brain read within PDFs when searching? Is there a maximum file size limit for the PDF? Like, can it read a book of 200 MB? So there's no limit to what the brain can search for, especially if you have large files. We will index and search through those files. The only thing is, like sometimes we have a lot of creatives in LA. If you're putting like movie files and heavy attachments, you can, depending on your desktop space, but we do have some for multimedia, some file size limitations when it comes to syncing, the files. I don't know if you have anything more to add as far as searching through PDFs or documents there.
No, and I've got a few, here are a few. I thought, well, I've got some trail maps and things like that. So here's a PDF. And so it found the word trail in this particular thought. Not as many as I had hoped. There's a Zion hiking PDF. So yes, absolutely. Text within a PDF can be indexed if it's text. That's something that the brain, doesn't have. We don't have control over that. Some PDFs, the text is actually graphic. Um, Hopefully you know what I mean, but if it's actual text in the PDF, then your OS is indexing it and will show up in your search results, absolutely. File size limit, this one isn't too big, it just has 2 pages, but there's no known limit that I'm aware of. I've got a couple of trail maps in here that are fairly large. And yeah, they'll show up in the, this might be, no, they'll show up in the search results as well.
All right, great. Well, I think
Yep.
with that, we've covered a lot of ground. If we have missed any of your questions, we offer free support to all users. Feel free to chat into our website, email us, join us tomorrow for Matt's The Brain 101. And actually, those examples are a little more manageable and a little more personal too. And also advanced users, if you just want to get covered, like how to export your brain into a Word document, you can also join towards the end of that session. It's a little tip, if you know the basics. And because it tends to be a smaller group, we can actually demo a lot more of the Q&A and get each question answered on those smaller sessions. So those 101s, even though they're called 101, they're just a great resource for all users. You can hop in, as you are in this one, come in at any time, leave at any time, we'll take you. It's all good. And I think with that, we're going to close today's session. But before we do, Matt, any final words of wisdom or thoughts on, getting ready for anything in 2022?
Well, I think we've covered all the bases, and we've hit on this topic a couple of times. Put that information into a reliable source, regardless of what information means to you. Documents, web pages, data for doing your job. Get it into a reliable source as the brain. The structure, the layout, the links, that can all come over time. But that search is always there and available for you, and getting it all into one reliable source will help you make better decisions for the future. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. And I'll just add, your perspective, your curated view, your trusted sources of information created in the way that it works for you, not the way a Google search list displays it. That's valuable, and you can build on that. So that gestalt of information and thinking that's in your head can come out in your brain and take your projects to the next level. And we hope you do that this year. And we look forward to seeing you on another brain technology event. And thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.